3 meters of solid ice. That's exactly how thick the frozen shield is that a modern nuclear icebreaker can smash through without even slowing down. At first glance, it seems like breaking ice is just a matter of raw horsepower, thick steel, and a sharp bow. But in reality, the deeper a ship pushes into the Arctic, the more hostile the conditions become. Beyond a certain latitude, the temperature drops below minus 50 degrees. Steel turns brittle, welds crack, and the ice itself stops behaving like a solid. It starts behaving like a wall of concrete that fights back. But the strangest part of the story isn't the ice at all. Deep inside these ships, engineers built something almost nobody expects to find on a vessel designed for war against nature. Today, you'll see exactly how a modern icebreaker is built and what's really hiding behind its steel hull. Have you ever wondered why cargo ships simply can't sail straight through the Arctic Ocean? It seems like it should just be a question of a powerful enough engine, but at these latitudes, the ice itself starts writing the rules. Here, the familiar world of shipbuilding ends, and a completely different one begins. One where a hull has to survive forces that would tear a normal ship apart in seconds. A regular vessel has a vertical bow, built to cut through water. An icebreaker's bow is completely different. It's shaped like a spoon, curving upward at an angle of 20 to 30 degrees. This isn't an accident. Instead of trying to cut the ice like a knife, the ship rides up onto it. The massive weight of the hull, sometimes over 25,000 tons, presses down from above until the ice simply gives way and shatters beneath it. Imagine this process. The ship doesn't so much sail forward as climb, crash down, climb again, and crash down again, sometimes advancing just a few meters per minute through the thickest fields. Under normal conditions, 3 meters of ice should be nearly impossible to move through at any real speed. But this is exactly where the real engineering begins. The hull itself isn't a single layer of metal. It's built from special low-temperature steel, reinforced along the waterline with a thick ice belt, specifically formulated to resist constant impact without turning brittle in extreme cold. Ordinary shipbuilding steel becomes dangerously fragile once temperatures drop far enough. Engineers learned this the hard way after early Arctic vessels developed cracks that spread across entire hull plates in hours. Underneath the hull, engineers installed something almost nobody expects: a bubbling system. Compressors force enormous volumes of air out through holes along the sides of the ship, creating a curtain of bubbles that reduces friction between the steel and the ice, and clears broken ice away from the hull as the ship pushes forward. Without it, the ice would simply grip the sides of the ship like a fist closing around a blade. Propulsion is just as unusual. Instead of a traditional propeller and rudder, many modern icebreakers rely on Azipods, massive rotating pods mounted beneath the stern that can spin the propeller a full 360 degrees. This lets the ship push, pull, or even break ice while moving backward. The largest icebreakers generate close to 75,000 horsepower, roughly the combined output of dozens of freight locomotives, funneled entirely into forcing a path through frozen ocean. But powering all of this requires something most people never imagine sits inside a ship's hull. In the center of the largest icebreakers ever built lies a nuclear reactor. 2 of them, in fact, sealed behind meters of radiation shielding, generating enough power to melt through ice non-stop for years without refueling. Engineers who designed these compartments had to solve a problem nobody had faced before. How do you keep a nuclear core stable on a ship that's constantly slamming into solid ice, vibrating, tilting, and absorbing shock after shock? The answer was a system of internal shock absorbers and a completely separate reinforced compartment structure, isolated from the rest of the hull so that even a violent impact on the bow would never reach the reactor. And then comes the detail that surprises almost everyone. Inside these floating fortresses of steel and radiation shielding, the crew doesn't live like soldiers in a bunker. Some of the largest nuclear icebreakers have a swimming pool, a sauna, a small gym, and even a library on board. Sailors can spend months trapped in the ice, thousands of kilometers from the nearest port, through weeks when the sun never rises at all. And engineers understood early on that survival wasn't only about steel and reactors, but about keeping a crew sane through the darkness of an Arctic winter. But strength alone isn't what keeps these ships from disaster. The greatest danger isn't the ice in front of the bow. It's what happens if the hull is ever punctured. To survive that, engineers divide the ship into sealed watertight compartments, like the cells of a honeycomb. If ice ever tears through one section, the rest of the ship stays completely dry, and the vessel keeps moving. This design saved lives more than once in Arctic history, and it came from a lesson written in blood.
Now, crews who've spent years working on these ships describe something that has nothing to do with steel plates or reactors. Deep in the night, when the ship is breaking through a thick ice field, a sound rises from the hull that has terrified sailors for generations. A deep, groaning boom, followed by a sharp crack that echoes through every deck. Older sailors used to call it the ice screaming back. And for decades, the sound fueled superstitions about ships waking something ancient beneath the frozen ocean. But what's really happening has a...
But not every icebreaker in history has survived to tell the tale. In 1933, the Soviet steamship Chelyuskin set out to prove that a regular cargo vessel without proper ice reinforcement could cross the northern sea route in a single season. For weeks, the ship pushed through drifting ice, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. Then, in February 1934, the ice closed in from both sides at once, and the pressure became unbearable. The hull, never designed to withstand that kind of force, was crushed and split open in minutes. The crew evacuated onto the ice itself, camping on a frozen floe for 2 months before rescue planes finally found them. It became one of the most important lessons in Arctic engineering history. Proof that no amount of ambition can replace the physics of a properly reinforced hull. That's exactly. Records in this field keep getting more extreme every decade. In 1977, the Soviet nuclear icebreaker Arctica became the first surface ship in history to reach the North Pole, smashing through ice that scientists had assumed no vessel could survive. Decades later, the icebreaker 50 Let Pobedi pushed the limits even further, capable of crushing through ice nearly 3 meters thick at a continuous pace, opening routes that had been considered permanently impassable a generation earlier. But even these giants are already being surpassed. Engineers are now finishing construction on a new class of vessel, the Leader class, designed to smash through ice up to 4 meters thick and keep the Arctic route open through the entire year, not just the short summer window. If the project succeeds, it will fundamentally change global shipping routes, cutting weeks off the journey between Europe and Asia. But some scientists are far less optimistic about what that means. Opening the Arctic to constant traffic means exposing one of the most fragile and unpredictable environments on the planet